So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you leave here tonight feeling a little bit more, relieved and knowing that you're making the right decisions. So this is a very important discussion that we're having tonight, as everybody's hot topic is to send or not to send. Back to School 2020 will definitely go down in history. I think there is a lot of nerves, a lot of excitement, but I think the nature of that is a little bit different this year for everyone, be it the students or the parents or the teachers for that matter. So we have come together on this platform to provide you with the information and clarity and also help you make the right choice and the decision for your family. Please remember that the dynamics and the strengths and weaknesses of every family are unique and they're all doing their very best. So let us all be kind to each other and respect each other's decision. A few housekeeping rules for the meeting tonight. Please make sure that your mic is on mute at all times. And if you wish to ask any questions, please do so in the chat section and do write who you're directing the question to. Joining us today to make this decision a little bit easier for all of us is firstly Dr. Kamalia. Dr. Kamalia is a pediatrician who graduated from Queen's University Medical School, and then she obtained her pediatric fellowship from the Hospital of Sick Kids. She obtained a master's certification in healthcare leadership through the Ontario Medical Association and York University Schulich Business School. At present, she is a co-owner of a pediatric private practice in Thornhill, and she is an attending staff at Mackenzie Health Hospital in Richmond Hill, and is also an affiliate staff at the Hospital for Sick Kids. She is an active member of the Toronto Jamaat and is on the Strategic Planning Committee for ISIJ, as well as on the board of directors of IMI. Next, we have Zena Fazel. She is a board-certified behavior analyst, professor at Seneca College, and owns 2 businesses. At the Behavior Company, Zena provides consultations and training to mental health and social services agencies across Canada. And she's very passionate about training staff that works with youth and adults in the mental health sector. At YTU Divorce, Zena works with parents who are going through a divorce, helping them heal and rebuild their relationship with their children, which I think is very, very important in today's world. She also works with family lawyers and law firms to expand their services using evidence-based practices. Next, we have Khairoon Abbas. Khairoon is a communication specialist, community volunteer, mom of 2 school-age kids, and she has a master's degree in journalism and a bachelor's degree in communications. Khairoon has been supporting COVID-19 communication efforts since March 2020, which has been a very, very important month for all of us since March break started in March and still hasn't ended. Khairoon has been working in the government communications for about 2.5 years, where she supports strategic communication initiatives. Khairoon also has worked as a journalist and writer in Africa, and she has also spent 6 years working as a communication consultant with the United Nations. Next, we have Fatim Kamalia. She is a busy wife and a working mother of 4 kids. She is a CPA and has a bachelor's of accounting science by profession, and she has been working for Canada Revenue Agency for the last 15 years. Prior to that, she has spent various roles as an accountant in the public and private sector, and her involvement in the community goes back to being an executive member of the PTA at the Asadiq Islamic School for 2 consecutive terms, and she also serves on the board of Jaffrey Support Services. Last but not the least, we have Syeda Hossain, who is an intermediate senior teacher, a small business owner. We love your stuff. And above all, she's a mother of 5 little ones, with the 5th one being, I think, expected in October, so very soon. So she is super duper busy. And on top of all of that, she has decided to homeschool her kids. My hat's off to you, man. I don't know how you're going to do it, but thumbs up for you. So lastly, for those of you who don't know me, I am Zara Khwaja, now also known as Mama Khwaja. I am a banker by day and blogger by night. I also have the honor of raising 5 beautiful children alongside my husband, who are unique in their own way and continue to teach us to be more grateful, more patient, and to be a better version of ourselves each day. Recently, I started writing, which has been, I think, a passion of mine for years, and I never got around to it. And I like to share my life experiences and knowledge and wisdom I've gained over the years. I've also created a Real Talk with Mama Khwaja, a platform that gives a chance to all the silent warriors and the unspoken heroes, and of course the experts that are within us, very close to us, to share their success stories and their wisdom. So on that note, let's hear it from the experts, we're going to kind of hash out this topic for back to school during COVID. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kamalia, and she's going to take it from here. Dr. Kamalia, I think you need to unmute. Oh, okay. Did you get the request now?
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I want to thank Mama Khwaja for a lovely introduction and for asking me to help make this decision with all of you participants on whether or not to send your children to school. So as mentioned, because I'm a pediatrician, I'm going to discuss the health considerations that you should make in deciding whether or not to send your children to school. As Mama Khwaja mentioned, I want to reiterate, it is not an easy decision. It's a difficult decision for teachers, healthcare professionals, parents, and children to make. So there's no one right answer. The decision may be made and it can be altered, and that's okay. You should not feel guilty. You should not feel pressured. You should not feel shamed into making whichever decision you make. Each family has their unique parts that will add into the decision, and I'm going to help you formulate ways in which you can arrive at a decision that you're comfortable with and that you feel happy with, as well as your children. So this is a question I've been having with my patients for the last month, more so in the last weeks, and I look at it into 3 categories. So the first category I asked my parents and teenagers to find out about, which is the school environment. So what has your school done, and what considerations is your school taking to help make your return a safe and healthy one? For example, have they reduced class size? The recommendations really are less than 15 students. Have they socially distanced the desks? So have they put one desk functional, one desk sort of non-functional, etc.? Or are they at least staggering for the teenagers the days in which you go to school? So alternate days, some mornings, some afternoons for different classes, multiple ways in which they can do that. But the point is that they should be thinking about this and considering ways in which to do it. The next thing is, have they made masks mandatory? Because they certainly should be, to all kids starting from kindergarten up until grade 12 inclusive. So that's the next thing you should be asking and looking into. The third thing is, you should find out what is their form of identifying people who are symptomatic, and how are they checking for this, as well as what are they doing in terms of any positive COVID cases in students. Are they identifying parents and children who are in close proximity to those particular students? In fact, the whole class should probably be identified. And what's their plan and protocol in place for identifying you, so that you know your family as well as your child's safety is being upheld. Lastly, and this is a little out of your control, but you can certainly ask them about their ventilation status, and there are specific filters that help prevent the spread of this virus, even though it is a highly infectious virus. And at least if the school is looking into it and allowing for classrooms that have better ventilation, open windows, etc., that's very useful. Also make sure that they have some plan in place for how lunch is being administered, recess time, and extracurricular activities. So basically, any questions you have, and those are the main things you should be asking, should be addressed. And at the end of your discussion with the teacher, the principal, whoever it is that's in charge of your school, your child's class, after you have a discussion, you should leave feeling comfortable that you're sending your child to as safe an environment as possible. Okay, so that's the first category. The second category is something that I deal with specifically, and is something you should discuss with your child's healthcare provider, family doctor, or pediatrician, and that's your child's health. So is your child healthy, and are they at higher risk for returning back to school? So what are some of the high-risk features? Well, certainly any children who have immunocompromised states, kids who are post-cancer, post-chemo patients, transplantations of any kind. I have a child who has had a cardiac transplantation. So any children who have high-risk features from immunocompromised states, highly suppressive immunocompromised situations for medications, things such as very chronic or severe asthmatics, and that would include a child who has a prem, who uses constant puffers, who's been admitted to hospital, perhaps been in an intensive care unit at some point in their life, needed intubation at some point, or alternatively, a child who's had a lot of chest infections, not just colds, but pneumonias, been on intravenous antibiotics, whose lung status is not quite 100%. And that's sort of something your doctor should know about your child and can discuss specifically whether they feel your child is safe or at higher risk for contracting COVID and getting quite severe from it if they return to school. And then the third category is something you should also discuss with your child's doctor, and that's the home environment. If they're not aware of your living circumstances, you can certainly fill them in when you have this discussion. And things to consider about the home environment is, do you have a high-risk home situation? A lot of families coexist. So do you have elderly grandparents that live there? Parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles who cohabit with you in the home environment that also have health conditions. Once again, immunocompromised states, immunosuppressive drugs, severe chronic lung disease, COPD, asthmatics, any other, high risk factors. And if that's the case, then the concern is bringing your child home. If they contract COVID, your child might do perfectly fine, because we know children do amazingly well. You might, as young and healthy parents, do fine, but those other family members may succumb to quite severe illness, and that's something you wouldn't want. In addition, if you're pregnant, like one of our speakers today is, and then you bring a new child into the family, because we do know infants have very poor immunity. So for that first few months of life, you don't want to expose an infant to any infections, particularly COVID, that an elderly child brings home. Okay, so that's for the family dynamics from a health perspective. In addition to that, there's family dynamics that you can also discuss with your family doctor or pediatrician, and Zainab's going to touch a little more on it in detail, but that's the health status of your child, because certainly to make a decision to say you're keeping your child home, how will that play on their actual health status, the risks of depression, the risks of behavioral outbursts, especially a child who has a bit of ADD, keeping them home is not certainly easy, as well as your social and socioeconomic / financial status. Can you stay at home? Is your job such that you can be at home, or will you lose your job? Do you have the means for someone to watch your children while they're learning virtually? Because we all know that's not easy. As Mama Quadra mentioned, we've kind of been on March break for 7 months now, and children are going stir crazy, as are all of us. So all of those are decisions you need to factor in. But like I said, we categorize it, or at least I do, into 3 big categories. And then you can write the pros and cons of each one, because like we've all mentioned, it's very individual, it's very specific, and there's absolutely no right or wrong answer, or one shoe fits all. Now, you can discuss it with family, with friends, with your colleagues, but remember, ultimately, the decision is one that you make that you should be comfortable with. And if it's a decision you feel after a month or 2 that is the wrong decision, you can always change it, right? You're not committed to commit your child to class and that's it, or vice versa, keeping them home and you're done. There's definitely re-entry points that I've heard, and once again, different schools have different processes in when they're allowing re-entry. But there's certainly at least 2 more before the end of the year, okay? Now, there's 2 things that I've given Mama Quadra that she will later post if there's interest. And both of these are good reads. And once again, they're not for everyone to follow, but they're meant to be individualized to your family situation and your family dynamics. And one is Sick Children's Guideline for School and Return. And it's a very complicated, I think 47-page guide. Nice, easy read with a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning. I'm kidding. But they do have a chart at the end, or charts at the end, that have pros and cons in many different situations for many different grade children. And it's certainly fair enough to go through that and tick off things that you think are pros for you and cons for you. For example, like I mentioned in detail, your child's health and home situation consideration, as well as is your child the kind of kid who can keep a mask on, not take it off for that long period of time? And if not, can you start training them now to prepare them for next week's school? And it's easily done because kids are amazing, they're resilient, and when you sit down and talk to them one-on-one, they understand. And if your child doesn't get it and he's a kid that's constantly has his mask off, then the teacher will certainly indicate that too, and you might have to change and bring him home for a few weeks to homeschool him and then send him back. So remember, things are not written in stone. They're going to be very fluid, and there's going to be a lot of change and modification for everyone. And then the other read that I particularly liked is an article that Sanjay Gupta, who's the CNN medical correspondent and a quite smart individual, I think, he wrote an article and he detailed his approach to how he came to the conclusion to not send his kids to school. Now, a couple of differences from where he is and where we are. He's in the States. He's in Atlanta, which was a major COVID center. And one of my best friends works there. So I know that a lot of schools were very hesitant in reopening. So he actually researched the stats, particularly in the area he lives in, which is very different than most of us, number one. And he also researched the stats in the school he's sending his children to. All three of his daughters were very disappointed with the decision because he's not sending them to school, but they were involved in making it. So the only reason I say to read it is not because I expect you to say, I'm not sending my children to school, but rather I want you to read how he arrived at the decision, because it's done very intellectually and very logically and academically based, and you can all do a similar process to arrive at a conclusion that works for your family. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers the way I would approach it. And if there's any questions at the end, then Mama Khwaja can certainly field them to me. I'll hand it over now to Zainab, who's going to talk about the mental health status about sending your children or keeping them at home.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I don't want to be too repetitive. So Dr. Kamalia, thank you. Yes, absolutely. In terms of like decision making and stuff, we're going to start with, I can't see anybody but the panelists and Mama Khwaja. So I'm going to assume everyone's going to listen to me, and you guys are going to do that at home. Take a deep breath, moms. And if there's any dads here, this is quite possibly the biggest decision you need to make as a parent. Nobody could have predicted this. Nobody knew that we were going to have to make these decisions. Back to school shopping now includes masks, right? Like I never thought I'd have to ever buy a box of 50 masks just in case I haven't washed the cloth ones, because you have to change them every day. Or just in case we're running out the house late and nobody has a mask, we're going to take one of the disposable ones. Anyhow, take a deep breath, guys. It is okay, completely normal to be having some kind of worry, anxiety, stress about your decision. I think that's huge. Before we get into what your kids might be going through, it's important to recognize what you might be going through as a parent, right? So completely understandable if you are struggling with your decision. In the links that's going to be sent tomorrow that Zara will send, there's a decision-making tool that the CDC came out with. Super easy to go through. You just click and it helps you, again, kind of look at from an educated perspective. If you haven't made a decision yet, you can use that tool, which is great. Every family is different, like both of the speakers have already said. And so it's not about comparing or like who's doing what and having all these, long discussions about what your sister-in-law is doing or your brother is doing or your best friend is doing. Every situation is so very different. So you certainly want to pay attention to the medical stuff that Dr. Kamalia just shared, and then also attend to the mental health well-being for yourself as well as your kiddos. Okay, a couple of quick things that you can do for your own mental health is be aware of what you're consuming on social media, right? And this doesn't relate just to this decision about back to school. This is about everything. This has taken a huge toll on millions of people across the world, right? And it's real. Pay attention who you're having discussions with, right? Just because they're family and close friends doesn't mean you need to talk to everybody and get like 14 cooks in the kitchen and everybody has to have a say into your decision. No, it's your family unit. You need to decide what's best for your family. So try to kind of stay away from all of the extra consumption of what everybody under the sun is doing or having multiple discussions. It will help you just be at ease with your decision. Okay. I like this. I use this a lot. Perfect versus good. So a lot of times we expect us as parents, moms and dads to just always have the right answer all the time and do it right. In a pandemic, it's don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? So is there a perfect answer? No. Is keeping your kids home the right answer? Maybe. Is sending your kids to school the right answer? Maybe. And maybe it's not, right? And like Dr. Kamalia was saying, it's not written in stone. So you can make the decision to change it if you need to. And again, this is just, everybody here is going to talk about different areas, and it's just to educate all of you guys to make that decision, right? So I'm not pro send your kids to school, or I'm not pro keep your kids at home. It's, you need to decide, and we're just here to give you a bunch of information about those. So if you are sending your kids to school, or you're kind of on the fence right now, one way to look at it is in terms of the strategies that have been proposed in all the different school boards. And like Dr. Kamalia said, some of those things, right, in her list to look for. But one strategy alone is certainly nowhere close to perfect, okay? So the masks, absolutely need to wear them. Are kids going to wear them the entire time? No. Are they going to have it on their forehead, off their nose, under their chin? Are they going to be like spinning it around? Yes, especially the young ones, right? And probably the teenagers too. But what you want to look at it this way is layering protection with protection with protection, right? And that's what provides hopefully sufficient protection for the masses. And so individually, they're not okay, but together they offer so much more. So also consider that once you have the information for your particular school. Okay, so what do we know right now? We know that the numbers are going to go up. All right, don't let it shock you. There's no, like, everybody knows that they are going to go up once school starts. We know that that's going to happen. Okay, children who quite possibly suffered from anxiety, depression, or learning disabilities or learning issues pre-pandemic are more likely to struggle going back to school, right? Because those are the kids who were struggling with that stuff because of school, right? The demands that were placed at school, whether they were social or academic or behavioral, that was really anxiety provoking, or that was really disturbing for them. So being at home was actually quite comforting for a lot of kids, and parents report behaviors going down now, right? So for that population of kiddos, if you have a child who did experience some of those, you should anticipate that there's going to be an increase in anxiety or depression, learning issues, some behavioral issues there too, right? So again, just being mindful of that is really, really important before we start. Okay, so kids can be resilient, and then I'm going to contradict myself to also say kids can be affected by the consequences of this pandemic, long-term and short-term. So yes, they're resilient, but I also take that with a grain of salt to say every child is so different. And what we do know is most mental health concerns start in childhood, right? Not all of them, but so many of them do. So it's normal and it's expected to see behavioral changes on both ends. We had a lot of reports of parents being like, my kids aren't sick. They haven't been sick since March, or my kids' behaviors have been fantastic. None of that. Well, you took away a ton of germs, right? Of kids being in school together, and then you took away expectations, which is what's been going on for 6 or 7 months. So again, just being aware that some of those behaviors might go up. If we don't address some of the mental health concerns in childhood, that's when they become really concerning, right? And there's a ton of research. I'm not saying this stuff to scare anybody. I'm just kind of laying out what research tells us, what we know, because awareness is step one. So with regards to social isolation, okay, research tells us, so irregular routines, we've got that going on. Major changes in the normality of life, we've had that going on for 6-7 months now, and social isolation will typically result in some level of adverse mental health concerns, okay? On the extreme end, you might see stuff like PTSD, right? Major depressive disorders, anxiety, or just feelings of isolation, loneliness, helplessness, okay? So just being aware of some of those ones, and I'm gonna go through signs to look for. In 2010, there was also research done, again, not to scare you guys, but this is reality, of social isolation and the effects of it compared to well-known risk factors, okay? And this is talking about low, like very, very low social interaction, or very negative, or absolutely no social interaction whatsoever, is it's equivalent, it can be equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, can be equivalent to being an alcoholic, can be more harmful than not exercising, and twice as harmful as obesity. So I know a lot of people, like, everyone's mental health well-being will have a physical impact as well, right? So you need to make sure you're attending to both of those. Quick point also is connections over technology, social media. It makes us feel like we're connected, but it's actually not giving us what we need, right? So it mimics it for the short term. It actually has detrimental effects. So if you are the parent who's decided to keep your kids home, okay, consider your bubble. Obviously, think about the safety and stuff, but make sure you're finding ways for your kiddos to have social interactions. And there's ways to do that. Do your play dates within your bubbles and stuff. I'm sure everybody has friends or family who have kids, you know, similar ages and stuff. Make sure you're encouraging that, right? If you only have one child, just being with mom and dad all the time doesn't suffice with social interaction. Okay, so get creative. If you are keeping your kids home, get creative with some of those bits. And I lost stuff. Sorry, I'm on multiple screens here. So, okay, so what to do again, attend to both the physical and the psychological signs that you might be seeing, okay? Here's some signs that you want to look for. So changes in behaviors and emotions that are out of proportion for your child, okay? Every kid is so different. And like, you know, Zara, Syeda, Fatim, you guys all have 4 or 5 children. Excuse me, every single one of them is going to present differently, right? In terms of behaviors and their personality and stuff. So remember when you're looking at this to look at it in terms of what your child's baseline is. What are they typically like? And is there something that just doesn't seem right? And then you want to look at the duration of it as well. So are they quick to get angry? Right? Are they throwing things, hitting things, punching things? Are they crying a lot more? And not only if it lasts like a week, I mean, I would pay attention to it, but I wouldn't be too concerned. I get concerned when you're hitting the 2-3 weeks of a lot of these behavioral changes. You want to be paying attention to those ones. Okay. And not just your typical, like they lose it for a little bit because they're mad because you took their PS4 away, or you shut the Wi-Fi off because, you know, they have to do their chores or whatever. And then they're, you know, kind of mad at you for a little while, then they're fine. Not that stuff. That's the typical stuff, right? This is, it lasts all day, every day for an extended amount of time, or a big portion of the day. All right. If it interferes with their thoughts, feelings, okay, if you see major changes, like your kid was really interested in certain things, and now they're not interested in the same things at all, they're pulling away from you or their siblings or other children, I would be looking for those signs. If they tell you they're sad or they're feeling anxious, these are all things to keep in mind and really pay attention to. Really sadly, suicide rates have increased exponentially during this period. Really, really high rates, right? Again, not to scare families, but it's something we need to keep our eyes on. Okay, so any type of self-injurious behavior needs to be attended to. If you don't have a mental health professional, that's kind of your go-to, or a psychologist, or anybody, go to your family physician. Okay, they can refer you to someone. They can have you initial talks as well. If it is something severe, your physician's likely going to have some kind of affiliation with a mental health agency or a hospital, more likely. So please, please, please don't ignore any of those ideations or suicidal behaviors or self-injurious behaviors. Even if you think it's minor, or even if you think it's just attention seeking, please, please, please attend to it. Okay. And then I am running out of time, so I'm going to go really, really quickly on these ones, okay? So how can you support your children, right? Again, regardless of what decision you make. Number one, and really importantly, and then it kind of stems down to that stuff in red there, is recognize your own mental health, your own stress, your own anxiety. Kids feed off of us so much. So you need to make sure you have a supportive circle where you can address your mental health concerns or your stress, anxiety about this decision, okay? Even if you have made the decision, it doesn't mean you can just rest, right? Like, I am sending both of my boys to school, and I've got grade 7 and grade 10. They're going back to school. but I'm still worried, right? Because I know numbers are going to go up, but there's still a risk. And so I think that worry will carry with us for some time, but you need to keep those things in check. Your mental health will feed into your child's mental health. Okay, so if you're really stressed, anxious about it, you got to keep, get the support that you need. Listen to your kids a lot. Let them talk, and you listen to them, okay? Make sure your discussions with them are age appropriate. Validate all of their feelings, okay? Everything's normal, everything's understandable. If you don't have an answer, tell them you don't have an answer and talk through it, research it, and look for those answers together, okay? In a calm state, you can talk about silver lining. I don't encourage parents when your child is heightened, escalated, and they're worried or they're scared or they're angry, you start talking to them about silver lining. The older kids are going to feel like you're just trying to pacify them. And the younger kids, you sound like Charlie Brown, like want. They don't hear what you're saying, okay? So wait till they're in a calm state, then talk about some of those positive things. Please don't use fear. Don't scare them with stats. Don't tell them, oh my God, if you don't wear your mask, you know what could happen? None of that stuff, okay? You don't want to instill fear during this pandemic when these kiddos are already dealing with so much. And also remain calm, right? Like the calmer you are through this, the better it is going to be for your kids. All right. So I think I went over time. Sorry, I talk a lot. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to pass it down to Khairoon, who's going to take it over now. I think, Zara, you might have to unmute her.
Thank you.
Are you good, Khairoon, there? I think so. Okay, perfect.
Great to learn from you, Dr. Kamalia and Zainab, and I'm here to just give you a few tidbits of information. As Mama Khwaja said, I've been working on COVID-19 communications for a while now. I feel like that's all I do, and I just wanted to share a few things that I've come across through my work. I'm also a mom of 2 school-aged kids who will be, inshallah, going back to school next week. And I chose to make that decision based on exactly what Dr. Kamalia mentioned on my family situation, as well as just the awareness, knowing that our community transmission here in York region has lowered, which to me indicates that it's safer than it was before. So some of the work I've been doing lately is explaining the different roles and responsibilities of all the different levels of government, organizations, and schools are working together to make this happen. There's a lot of fear out there of the unknown, and that's understandable. As Zainab mentioned, we're all going through this very new period. But in a way, I think it helps to know and become an informed parent, understanding what everyone is doing. So at the ministry level in Ontario, the Ministry of Education, they're the ones that provide that guidance in terms of how reopening of schools will look like. And they are the ones that actually last week, perfect timing, they provided a guidance of what will happen when COVID-19 enters our schools, because that is going to happen at some point. Once the Ministry of Education provides that guidance, school boards work closely with the local public health units. So in our region, that would be York Region Public Health. And together, they further dissect those guidelines to come up with specific plans. And you know, I know based on this work for the last month, throughout August, everyone has been asking what will happen if someone in my kid's class has symptoms, or if someone in their family tested positive. You know, how can we even enforce physical distancing for younger kids, especially? I have a kid going into SK, and I know it's probably not going to happen because that's just not what they're used to doing. So recognizing that we're all going through this period, I just wanted to reassure as much as I can that the only reason that our officials have given the green light to reopen schools is because the rates are lowering. If this was still a high-risk situation we had in March, we definitely would be having a different discussion right now. And they have put in place so many protection strategies in the school setting, such as self-screening, which happens at home, and I'll touch on that briefly, adapted school environments, hand hygiene, masks, and cohorting and distancing. And these are things we've been doing, and our kids are going to enter a new school environment that they're not used to at all. They don't know what will happen. We can prepare them as much as we can, but it's not going to be the same, or it's not going to be enough for what they're about to encounter if you're sending your kids to school. But amidst all of this, I think one main message that I want to share with you is that as parents, our goal is to be as informed as we possibly can. There is a lot of hearsay, and it's going to get worse. Your kids will come home and say, so-and-so has a cold, and you're going to start having these questions in your head, and you'll start worrying, and then, one thing leads to another. I just urge you to take this time before school starts, whether you're sending your kids to school or not, to really dig deep and understand your school's plan. What is your board or your school's plan in addressing COVID-19, and really get to know. Also understanding what the Ministry of Education has put in place, so when things don't feel right at your school, you are informed and you can actually speak up and say, we need to address a few things that are not following what public health is saying. We recently at York Region launched a webpage called york.ca/safe@school. I'll share that with Zehra when we're done. And that page really breaks it down and explains what every level of, every key player is doing to support this. But it's beyond that. Us as parents have a humongous role to play. And that's because when our COVID-19 transmission levels are low in the community, it is helpful because it helps prevent bringing the virus into the school. It's actually from close contacts that we are predicting that the virus will get into the schools, rather than the kids bringing it home to us, given what the science has been telling us. And I'm not a medical person, but based on my understanding is our environment at home, in the community, is actually what will introduce or may introduce the virus in our school settings. So we have a humongous role to play. So what can you do as a parent? Ensure that you're continuing to follow public health guidelines. Things like maintaining physical distancing, washing your hands, none of that is going to change for a while. This is it for us for a long time. And I think we need to embrace that and live with it. Also, just being aware of all these rules, we are actually only entitled to one social circle. So you should only have one social circle that you are close with. But nowadays, I think people, since we entered stage 3, it's easy for you to feel, for all of us to feel like things are getting back to normal, but we're far from normal. Recently, York Region issued a self-screening form, and I'll share this as well. And I highly recommend everyone print out this. It's a 1-pager. I think it's a 2-pager. Put it on your fridge and get used to those COVID-19 symptoms so that you know what to watch out for in your children, in yourselves, and whoever else that lives with you. And one thing that we are typically guilty of, many of us, especially if you're working and your kid gets sick and it's something minor, you send them off to school thinking, oh, just make it till 4 p.m. and come home. We're not able to do any of that anymore, because really at this point, any illness is enough cause of concern. So it's really important for you to monitor your children's health, and also just ensure that our kids understand all those protection measures in place. Zainab touched on issues of masking. That is a humongous challenge, especially for the younger ones. And that actually explains why from kindergarten to grade 3, the province has not asked that this is required for them to wear a mask at school, because it is hard. They fidget with it. And once you start playing around with it, it's not useful anymore, because you're introducing germs and you're touching other things as well. So, as much as we can, let's encourage our children to know what's expected of them. Let's reduce their fears by just being honest and transparent, as Zainab said. And I just wanted to just further say that COVID-19 outbreaks have been happening since March. We've seen them in our long-term care homes. We've seen them in workplaces. Many places have experienced outbreaks. Any congregate setting where you've got many people coming together or living together. Are we to expect some in schools? For sure. Do we know when? No, we don't know whether it's going to be in September or December. But let's approach this with an open mind, knowing that this is very possible, and knowing that our public health officials are going to step in and will step in to make sure that it's tackled appropriately as with the other outbreaks. And just remain informed. Let's not get into this social media world of spreading information without verifying that information and knowing what you're sharing is is truth, because someone else may see what you're posting or sharing and take it for the real thing. So let's try and just be as informed as we can and support our children through this change, because we're going through the change, but they probably need our support the most at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khairoon, for that. All of you, that was so good, all the information that we've gotten. So we're going to now move on to Fatim. Fatim, if you can unmute yourself quickly, and what we're going to talk about, we want to know what your perspective is as a mom, and what made you decide I believe you're sending your kids to school. So what made you that decision, and what helped you make that decision, and also what gave you the confidence to make that decision?
Thank you, Mama Khwaja, for initiating this, and it's so interesting to get everybody's perspective from a medical point of view, mental health point of view, and Khairoon's point of view, and the other speakers that you'll see. I have a university student, 4 kids, so a university student, 1 in high school and 2 in elementary. So this was a really tough decision for us as a family. We made a conscious decision, both my husband and I, where we weighed out all the options, we considered the risks and the benefits. As the other speakers have mentioned, you have to do what's right for your family, what works for you. So we looked at, the social aspects, we looked at academically, we looked at the fact that both my husband and I are working full time, and the kids have been home for 6 months, and we had no choice. We had to be the teacher. We had to be the cook. We had to do everything, basically. We had to be their friend. We had to be their social buddy. So can we still continue that? We have to face reality at some point. Again, we looked at their mental health, and we took everything into consideration. Again, what Dr. Kamalia said, what is the school doing, and how comfortable we are, and what protocols we are going to put in our house, so that to make it safe for the kids, So again, somebody mentioned masks. That's a big thing on my list. Usually at this time, I'm going back to school shopping, and I'm actually shopping, but now I can't even go shopping. But instead, I'm trying to choose the best mask, and I have my son's going to go to grade 3, so I'm thinking of how many masks do I send? Do they have one after food? All these considerations that we have to take. But again, there's no right or wrong decision, and we are at a point as a family that if this doesn't work out, and we find that it's not working for us, we'll take them out. But at this point, just for everybody's mental sanity, for all of us, to do the best, we've taken this decision.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's what we've done too as a family, because I can see even though the kids are so relaxed and they're so and they're in their zone, they're in their comfort zone. So as Zainab said, any of the anxieties that were bothering them during school time, social pressures and all that, they've settled, and they've settled quite a bit. So I think it is a good time to kind of try to integrate them back into the school system and see how that's going. And so and that's what we're doing. And I know, and the reason at least we chose to send them is because if God forbid things changed for the worse, we can always keep them home. But if everything keeps going well, and we had chosen at the beginning of the school year, at least right now, to keep them home, we cannot send them back until the next semester. So that's, we feel just to kind of take advantage of that flexibility. So that's why we're deciding to send the kids, and absolutely the masks and the face shields, and instead of the coordinated outfits and the top of the shoes, the sneakers and all that shopping, at least there's a little bit of a change in perspective in shopping for sure. So I'm going to now ask Syeda to take over and share with us what made her decide or made her choose to keep her kids home, and what resources is she using, especially as a teacher, so to homeschool them, and what are the systems that she has tapped into, or the resources, and if she can share that with everybody who's participating in the call. So if there are any parents who are choosing to keep their kids home, we'd like to, at least have some resources for them as well. So Syeda, take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Excellent perspectives. I loved hearing the medical aspect, the emotional side of it. And I think it's going to make it really hard for parents to make that decision, hearing all these different perspectives. Also want to apologize for the background, but I think the black being, 8 months pregnant makes me look a little skinnier. So hoping for that. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen and share the PowerPoint that I created, and hopefully it works. Can you guys see it? Yeah? Okay. So homeschooling during COVID 2020, it was not an easy decision for me to come to, mainly because I have been losing my mind. It's not easy with the 4 kids. They're, 3, 5, 7, 9. And I have the other one coming along next month. So I had to actually weigh the pros and cons, and it was tough, but my eventual decision was on homeschooling. I'll tell you why I came to this decision. Okay, so first off, I'm just going to quickly touch upon why I made the choice to homeschool, things to consider before deciding to homeschool, and how to set up your day and space if you do decide to homeschool, because obviously you need to set it up differently. It can't just be the same way it's always been. Okay, so why I chose to homeschool. That's my main reason. Their safety. I'm not saying that the ones that are sending their kids to school obviously don't worry about the kids' safety, but I'm very paranoid as a person. So for me, every time they would walk in the door, I would start stressing, like even if I would send them for a shower right away. And I've seen so many different things on Pinterest or on Instagram. And I know Zainab Fazal touched upon this, don't look at Instagram and think that's reality. It's really hard to see other parents do all these things and you feel like you have to live up to that standard. So they had these baskets with like Lysol and, wipes, and they had to like spray their shoes, their bags, and they had to go for a shower. But I think I would still be paranoid, especially with a newborn in the house. So my situation is very different to most people. Basically because I do have a newborn coming along, inshallah, and I'm on maternity leave. Not everyone has that option where they can just, pick up and, just leave their jobs and stay at home with the kids. Had I not been in this situation, would I have done the same thing? I think I probably would have, as I said, because I'm super paranoid. So I would have probably left my job and I would have stayed home because I can't handle it. It's just too much for me. So on September 1st, yesterday, Ford, and this is based on whatever I've read online, okay? And I know Khairoon had said that, you can't just trust everything you read online, but this is just as a parent. So I read that Ford stated that 21 kids under the age of 19 got COVID. I feel like the city is getting ready for the inevitable second wave, which could result in another lockdown. I feel like the consistency in their education is important. So Ford stated that if there was an outbreak, even if it was the first day of school, he wouldn't even hesitate to shut schools down. That would break their consistency. So they're like, all of a sudden you're like, yep, no, sorry, it's online now. And, it just breaks that consistency. So, and as I said, with a newborn, I wouldn't feel comfortable. The other thing is I have been an educator for about 15 years. So for me, I'm comfortable staying at home and teaching the kids. Not everyone feels that they can give that to their kids. I am mainly trained to teach intermediate and senior, but so this really isn't my forte, teaching little ones. I feel like it's more babysitting than it is teaching because it's not my thing. It takes a lot of patience, which, I'm starting to lack now. But I still think that as an educator, I feel like I can give that to them. Maybe other parents that I've spoken to, they just don't feel as comfortable teaching their kids. Okay. things to consider before deciding to homeschool. The reason I chose this picture is because that's my husband and I in Florida when we were losing our minds with the kids. So that's basically how you may feel while they're at home all the time. Okay, so sanity. That's something that you really need to consider, your own and theirs. I know Zainab Fazal had touched upon the kids, you know, and that their need for that emotional stability and how hard it is being at home. So we all need a break. With the kids at home all day, you need to be able to schedule in time for yourself. Mine all nap, even my 9-year-old, because I'm sleep Hitler, basically. So I have them all napping, even at the age of 9. So I get that break during the day. Socialization, and again, Zainab had mentioned this. It's really important for your kids to socialize and meet up with other people. So I'm lucky enough to have sister-in-laws who are also choosing to homeschool, and their kids are the same age. So within our own bubble, we can get the kids to socialize. So you have to ensure, if you do choose to homeschool, that you're giving your kids that, you know, the same thing that they would get in school. The recess, breaks is as important as their education. They need that break away from schooling. You also need support. So I think a lot of us as mothers, we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. So right now I'm actually thinking how many loads of laundry I need to go fold after this. Because that's all we do. We're constantly thinking about the million things that we need to get done. You need to make sure that you have that support, the emotional support, be it a spouse, a friend, whoever it is, someone who's going to support you through the process of being a homeschool mom, because, you know, it's tough being with kids all day and not having that socialization. Another thing to consider, is it financially feasible for you to be at home? So in today's day and age, you often need 2 incomes. Is it possible for you to stay home? If not, obviously, you know, you're going to make the decision that you need to send your kids to school and pray they're safe. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm going to quickly show you my homeroom setup, because the structure of the actual homeschooling is important. It's still a work in progress. I don't even have the table legs, as you will see. So this is our homeschool setup. Still a long way to go. So I have their chairs. I have their little boxes, which I'll just quickly go through. 1 second. Okay. So strategic seating arrangements. What I've done is I've kept the one older one and a younger one, and then another older one and a younger one, so that they can assist each other as I'm going through my structured day. So, and I'll touch upon the structure as well. So I'm keeping, you know, just so that they can help each other out while they're working, and to avoid fights as well. So organizing your stuff just so that you can keep everything organized. It's just going to maximize efficiency, minimize issues. So keep everything in a structured manner. Over here I have manipulatives, math, literacy, and practice, so that it's easy for the kids to get to and just get whatever they need. Okay. Incentives. A lot of people don't agree with it. I just know that it works with my kids. So for example, I have these little tickets on the side, and I have their individual boxes on the table. They can earn tickets, and then I don't know why they like these squishy things that you get. I have no idea why, but you get them on Amazon. You buy a bunch of them, and you give them as incentives. So they complete a certain amount of work, and you say, oh, you got 10 tickets? That's great. Now you can buy, you know, a reward or whatever. And they even have incentive charts that you can use. Okay. Now, this is the last part. I'm sorry, guys, I'm taking so long. But kids thrive on structure. So I have this. I can even send it. I think Mama Khwaja, I'll send it to her and she can send it out. So you guys structure your day pretty much like you would with school. However, it's also important to note that some days might not go as planned. So for example, a kid gets sick and you have to tend to that kid. It's not going to go like every other school day, because you're going to have to stop everything and deal with that kid. So at school, there's 1 teacher to about 23 students. Now, as a teacher, I can tell you that a lot of the time is spent, oh, miss, can I go to the washroom? Oh, you know what, miss? Or they're starting to talk, you know, guys, come on, back to work, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, there's a lot of other things that get in the way, or there's recess, or there's, you know, salah, or whatever it is that you're dealing with. Over here at home, guess what? It's individualized attention that you're giving your kids. So you don't need to spend an entire school day. You literally need to spend maybe an hour of instruction a day, and that's it. So it's not going to be that tough, I think. So the main thing is, I think, as a teacher, structure, and make sure that the kids know what they're doing throughout the day. So have their learning goal set out in the morning. So you say, today we're going to be working on first math, literacy, whatever it is that you're going to do in your day. They thrive on structure, and they need to know what they're learning for the day. So you give that to them. They know what to expect. You know what to expect. And it doesn't take as long as an entire school day. It'll honestly only take about 2 hours, and the rest of the day, I don't know, get them to, you know, clean the showers, do your laundry, whatever it is you need done. And I think I'm done.
Yeah, that's how it should be. That's I guess we have the perfect opportunity for moms, especially, or parents who are homeschooling their children. I think it's a perfect opportunity to teach them about the, you know, how, like, the academic side of it, and then also teach them about home economics, or running a house, and, you know, learning, okay, today's class is about cleaning the toilet. Yay. So thank you so much, each and every one of you. This was amazing. So we do have a few questions, so I guess we can start. So home daycare versus school daycare, who would like to answer that? Mums, or one of the guest experts? What would you recommend if there is a choice between sending your child to a home daycare, a private home daycare, or sending your child to a you know, sort of structured daycare? Anybody? You need to unmute. Oh, there we go. Dr. Kamalia, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. So once again, if it's a daycare situation or a school situation, health concerns don't change. The only difference is in daycare, as Khairoon mentioned, kids' masks are likely not on. And if they are, good luck keeping them on for more than a minute with a snotty nose, faces in each other's you know, close proximity. Or you've all seen the post where you send your daughter with a you know, Princess Jasmine mask, and she comes home with a Superman mask and says, well, I gave mine to Jonathan, who gave it to Sabrina, who gave hers to Michael. You know that's going to happen, right? So I think daycare, when you're sending your child to daycare, what's your goal? Clearly, education at that point is not the high goal. I mean, I really don't think a 3-4-year-old who's just sort of, that's even higher, starting JK, is going to get a significant amount of education that's lacking if they're home for 6 months or 12 months. So I think identify your goal. If your goal is, I have to work, I need to be able to work financially, or I'm going to lose my job, you don't really have an option. And what I tell a lot of my patients at that age group of kids is, if you have the means to stay at home, please consider that, because there's people who don't, and at least you're decreasing the size of class students, or, you know, toddlers, for the rest of the people who can't. And this way, if you find your situation changes and you have to return back to work, then you can integrate your child knowing that the teachers at that age have, or daycare workers have, a good protocol in place of comfort, of experience, and they can handle a higher load of kids in phase 2. Okay, so that's what I think. I want to make one point clear to support sort of both stances of mothers. I don't think there's anything wrong with sending your kids to school. Also, I think you have to understand that medical schools, which, you know, to a lot of people is the highest level of education, post-secondary, have all closed down first and second year students to have virtual classes till January, all in Ontario, until they revisit it. So think about that. If they're saying you can be taught virtually at that level of post-secondary school learning, I don't think anyone in any educational status below that can suffer, right? Now, 3rd and 4th year medical students obviously have to be in hospitals doing rotations, etc. So they're involved in classrooms. But 1st and 2nd year are being taught from home virtually until January, where things will be reassessed, because they're realizing that we all play a role in this big piece of puzzle that we're all trying to help each other. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, That's great. And then somebody was asking about the few resources. So I'm just going to repeat myself once more in case anybody missed it, that I will be sending out a follow-up email with all the resources that any of our panelists or experts are going to share with us, so that you can, in your leisure time, and as Dr. Kamalia said, it's a Saturday afternoon read with a cup of coffee. So you can go through everything on your own and on your own time and on your own pace. So we have
Sorry, can I just
symptoms. Somebody was asking about symptoms, which you also answered. Okay, so another question is, should we be sanitizing our children's clothes, shoes, bags, etc. when they come home? I think, Dr. Kamalia, this probably would be yours
Okay,
to
so
answer.
I don't know how many of you had watched the ISIJ lecture on COVID that three of us had done, where we had Dr. Sivji do the respirology component, Dr. Shabir Ali Bai did the geriatrics, and I did the pediatrics. That's sort of called fomite transmission, which is on inanimate objects, not your body. And the risk from transmission that way is very limited, number one. Number two, it's surfaces that are a little higher risk, right? So this is more concerning to have your child at school wash down, or at least have some form of, Lysol, hand sanitizer when touching school surfaces and other objects that other kids are also co-touching. And thirdly, we know that children, and although Doug Ford mentioned 21 cases September 1st, honestly, I haven't looked into those stats, because I still know Sick Kids Release showed 2.5% of all COVID cases are in children. 2.5%. So that's 100 cases of COVID, 2.5% are in, well, not even children, under 18, so adolescents and kids. That's incredibly rare. So we know kids and young adults or teenagers do very well because the risks are lower, and they also do better with COVID in terms of severity. One, because they're generally healthy, except for the situations I mentioned of kids who are high risk. And secondly, the reason is because these kids have been exposed to coronavirus, which is what COVID is. It's just one specific genotype 19 with a bit of the SARS virus, without getting too complex into its structure. But they've been exposed to various varieties of coronavirus throughout their life. So when your kid has come home from daycare or school with a snotty nose, congestion, a cough, a fever, chances are it's been numerous of those times one form of coronavirus. So they've built immunity to many of the coronavirus serotypes. So when they catch this particular strain, their body already has memory cells, already has an immune response previously experienced, so they don't get as sick. So honestly, I think that's where, with all due respect to what Kieran, you said about them deciding no masks under age or school, grade 3, etc. I don't think there's any pediatrician around the GTA which will agree to that. I have to put that out there. We're all saying masks from JK onwards. You know what? A mask is not going to make a 2-year-old touch his face more if he's learned how to wear it and he learns this is the new norm. And honestly, if he does touch his face, he's touching his face. He's not contaminating himself anymore. It's his mask. It's already stuck with his, germs. It's when the mask is off and he's coughing, sneezing, licking, kissing his, friend. That or that social distance is less because they both have their mask off. That's when there's a risk. For him touching his own face, and all due respect, at that age, he's not going to co-spread, or there's no risk. And even the younger kids, the reason, once again, they said no necessity for masks is because the risks of them getting infected and getting severely ill is so low. Okay, so that's a bigger factor in that.
Okay.
So
right.
I think it's okay.
And just one follow-up question for that. So I know I have to wear a mask at work all day, and I feel like I'm suffocating. I feel like, obviously it feels like I'm not taking in enough oxygen because I'm keep breathing back my own air. So for children, like how long should they keep the mask on, or let's say how much time should they absolutely need mask-free in a 24-hour day?
So I think from a health perspective, oxygen exchange, healthy breathing, there is no maximum limit, right? So the way I explain this to kids who have normal lungs exchange oxygen exactly as well as adults do. Surgeons have been wearing surgical masks their whole life, right? If you've ever had an operation done centuries ago, many years ago, what do? Gown, mask, clean gloves, and a surgical mask. And any assistant in the room, nurses, etc., all wear the same mask. So you can completely breathe well. And those are the 3-ply masks. So they're even a higher level of or less comfort than the mask they're suggesting kids wear, right? You just need one layer for this because you're not in a high-risk environment or hospital, etc. Patient situation, you're just with friends and people. So I don't think there's any risk. I think it's more that perceived sense of I can't breathe, I feel suffocated, and a lot of that comes from the brain rather than the lungs and the nose and upper airways. So you teach your child, and that's why I've been telling my patients, start this practice a week before. If you're already teaching them, or doing homework with them, have them wear the mask. But I think another piece to add in is to have, in those younger age, mask-free times, right? Because they're already saying don't wear a mask under grade 3. So I'm saying, as many other healthcare providers are, wear a mask, but give them mask-free times. And the key there is teaching them how to take the mask on and off without touching their nose and mouth. And physicians have been doing this since March, where we do take mask-free breaks in the back where we're eating, drinking, chatting with each other, right? We don't wear a mask for that full 8 hours if we don't have to. But we do it proper. We hand wash before and after, and we take it off in a proper method, which you can easily find on YouTube, or I can provide the link, where you're not touching your nose, face, mouth. Okay, so I think that's perfectly fine. So once again, to answer, I don't think there's a maximum amount of time. Each child is different, but the vast majority of kids, it's not a breathing issue. It's the psychology of I can't breathe, I'm suffocating, which you can help get them over by training them early and then give them mask-free times.
Sure. Just very quickly, we have a few minutes, so we'll take a few more questions. Are you recommending the flu shot, whether we homeschool or send them to school?
Yeah, so flu shot is a separate issue. It's not coronavirus. And on its own, it also causes, some stats say, more death in healthy kids under 18 than so far coronavirus has. So it's a whole different topic with different stats, etc. But without any uncertainty, the flu shot should be given, even more so given this coronavirus pandemic, because of the coexisting symptoms.
Okay, and then there's a lot more questions, but a 4-year-old, can a 4-year-old get tested for COVID? Is that okay?
Yes, I did message that one, Mama Khwaja, and I said you can get COVID tested at any age. It's a swab, it's safe, it's not harmful, and it's easy to do. Okay.
We have a few more questions, but we are coming. Okay, so somebody said part of my decision making is that my kids do not have any pre-existing conditions. Okay, all right, it's just a comment. So we do have a few more questions, and what I'll do is I'll email them out to the people that have been asked for, and we can get back about those. So we just wanted to quickly wrap this up. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you leave here tonight feeling a little bit more relaxed, relieved, and confident about the decisions that you're making for your family. I would also like to thank all my guests and parents on the panel for taking time out from their busy schedules and taking time away from their families in the evening right now, and to participate with this thing. Special mention to Mubina Jaffer and Zainab Fazal for all their support that they gave me to put this together. As mentioned by all our experts, there are a lot of resources out there, which I will be sending in an email. And thank you everyone for the people who asked all the questions. And again, if there's any questions that were unanswered, we will answer those questions and get back to you. Your feedback is very, very important to me and all my guests. So do let me know how this session went for you and what you took from it. And in the email, I will send a link for that. And kindly do follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also listen to my podcasts on Spotify. I just wanted a shameless plug in there right now. So as I said, I'm giving a platform to people, the silent warriors and our heroes that are within our community, very close to us, right next to us. So I am open for any recommendations and suggestions of any other topics that you would like to see on this platform. And any person that you feel has a lot to share, I would love to have them as a guest on my platform and have a coffee with them and share. So thank you everybody for joining in, and have a great night.
Thank you, Mama Khwaja.
All right, thank you everybody.
Practice.
Khadafis.
Thank you, Khadafis.